ولله الأسماء الحسنى فادعوه بها.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear viewers, and welcome to another episode coming to you from MTA International Gambia Studios on the topic Asma'ullah al-Husna. And on today's episode, we are going to talk about two attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is Ar-Raqeeb and Al-Basir. These are two important attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and like we have discussed previously on some other attributes of God, we would again try to do justice to these two attributes and discuss about them at length. I am here in the studio with Ustaz Suleiman Tanja on my immediate right, and on his right we have Ustaz Rohan Ahmad. Gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the program. Like as usual, let me read a quotation about these attributes before we go into some other details about them. The characteristics of watchfulness in man is praiseworthy only if his observation is directed to his Lord and his heart. That takes place when he knows that God is his watcher and observer in respect of everything, and if he recognizes the fact that he himself and Satan are his enemies, and that these two enemies avail themselves of every opportunity to induce him to fall victim to negligence and disobedience, as the result of which he is on his guard against these things by observing their ambushes, deceit, and their starting places, in order that the outlets and avenues available to them might be blocked off. This is from the 99 Names of God in Islam in Al-Ghazali, page 43. So, Ustaz Baba, as usual, we take first the attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we will be discussing, and we talk about the definition. And with that, you tell us first the definition of Ar-Raqeeb before we come to Al-Basir.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Ar-Raqeeb is also another attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means the all-observing, the watcher, the witness, and the controller also as well. So when we look at this name, it has the connotation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being always present there, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being watchful, as well as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granting his security and his personal love to a particular servant of his. And when we look at the Siga Raqeeb, it appears in 3 occasions and 3 times in the Holy Quran, and we also have a Raqiba twice in the Holy Quran. And as we've seen, like it has lots of meanings that comes to the being witness, watching over, taking care of people, and so on so forth. And this we have to also put in mind that it is not only that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala watches over the physical person, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also having the capability and the ability of seeing through our hearts and also embedded in our hearts. So this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called Ar-Raqeeb. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah An-Nisa, He has advised the believers, admonished the believers. He said, "Wattaqullaha allazi tasa'aluna bihi wal arham." You fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of things, matters that would be asked of you amongst yourselves. And that is one, firstly, that you instill that you generate the relationship, cordial relationship amongst yourself between like kinships. And he also says, Inna Allah kana alaykum raqiba. And surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all observing, all seeing, upon you, whatever you do and how you intend to do. So you see, even the minutest part of it is like our intention towards our kinship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is observing those things, and He's seeing, and He is going to ask with regards to all those particular things. So this is Allah called Ar-Raqeeb. And we've seen, for example, in the life of Hazrat Umar, the second Khalifa of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, radiya anhu. Once he was going around strolling, the Medina, the city, to search and look up, like how call it, to see the situation of the masses around. So he sat beside a house. There was a woman with her daughter. So the daughter was having the woman was like a milk seller, and she ordered the daughter to add water in the milk. So meaning to mix some water in the milk so that to have more produce, to increase the quantity of the milk. So the daughter told her, no, has the Khalifa of the time, that's Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, has forbidden this. We should not do this. He said, no, you do it. As I said, he said, even if Hazrat Umar is not watching, then Allah is watching. And she used the word Raqeeb. So meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything, our deeds, our actions that we do. Even though someone might not be seen, but Allah knows exactly how He's seen exactly what we do. So in one way, Allah is there to watch over us. He's there to see, and also there to particularly control and observe those very things. But yet also Allah is also there to see the minutest part of our heart, our intentions, and also Allah is also there to know and see whatever we do. So this is Allah called Az-Raqeeb.
Thank you very much, Ustaz Baba. I think the only aspect I will add there for some other questions later on would be that aspect of the name of God, Az-Raqeeb, that is about holding in consideration and respect. And that is when it comes to us learning from these attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and exhibiting those attributes in our daily lives. So that aspect too is embedded in the name of God, Az-Raqeeb, so that when later on we are using it to, talk about ourselves and how we can benefit from these attributes, maybe it can come up. That's why I just brought it up. And Ustaz Ruhan, let's see now the similarities that this word, this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ar-Raqeeb, has with other attributes of Allah, or there are similarities or differences or whatnot.
Yeah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. When we speak of the similarities, there is an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Basir. So, which means all-seeing. And which basically means that there's nothing which is out of his sight. Even no matter how insignificant that thing is, it is not out of his reach. He's seeing everything. So in connection to this, we spoke about Ar-Raqeeb as he explained the meaning of it, which means the watchful. So the difference in these two attributes have with each other is like, this being watchful is in the sense or with the aim to guide someone or to protect someone, or to, with the aim of with the intent of protecting someone from getting harm. So, but for Al-Basir is like nothing is hidden from his sight, but Al-Raqeeb is like nothing is hidden, of course, but then he protects his people from getting harm. Yes.
So it's like Al-Basir has that aspect of it that has to do with knowledge and knowing everything in detail, or seeing everything in the minutest detail. But when it comes to the attribute of God, Ar-Raqeeb, it's not only knowing that in detail, but it has another aspect, like you have explained, of protecting that thing that God is fully well aware of. It could be, a loved one who is certainly in harm, who is in a danger of getting harmed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows exactly in that particular place and the minutest detail that could harm them. And it is always not anything that we must see, because what we do not see, we can say that is far more than what we can perceive with our own eyes.
Yes, and also when we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala having like seeing, being Al-Basir, we are not only talking about the physical eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah is Nur, He is Nur Samawati wal Ard. We are talking about those attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we cannot fathom, but yet Allah has the minutest information that can never be garnered by man. And we've seen, like for instance, in the Holy Quran, Allah said, "Lahum a'yunun la yubsiruna biha," with regards to prophet, like with regards to the disbelievers or people who abstain themselves from garnering the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his prophets. He said, for those people, they have eyes but they don't see. He said, hum kal an'am, those people are like animals, bal hum adal, but they are even worse than animals. So this is how Allah ascribed, this thing, because the ability, that faculty of seeing the inside is not in them, but yet also the one that is granted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they repelled. So this is how they gradually, abstain themselves from the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah bin Raqeeb also, we've seen in the example of Hazrat Isa alayhi salatu wasalam in Surah, in the Holy Quran. Allah says, "Anta qulta lin-nasi ittakhuzuni wa ummiya ilahayni min dunillah." Are you the one who have told the people that worship me and my mom as two lords, as two gods beside Allah? Then we see Hazrat Isa alayhi denying, no, Allah, I am not the one who said, and you know I am not the one who said. And he said, in kuntu qultuhu faqad alimta. If I were to say that, then you would have known. So this is how Allah. And lastly, he said, kuntu alayhim shahidan ma dumtu fihim. I was a witness amongst them for as long as I lived among them. فَلَمَّا تَوَفَّيْتَنِي, but since you killed me, anta kunta raqiba alayhim, you were the watcher over them. Kunta raqiba alayhim. So you were the watcher over them. Let's divest into this thing, because we see when Allah is watcher over them, Allah was physically seeing them in His own regard, in His own accord, and Allah was also knowing their situations, but also Allah knew what they intended to do. But you see, and Jesus is telling Allah, you have all these attributes. I am not having those attributes because I'm just a man, a mere person. So anta kunta raqiba alayhim wa anta ala kulli shay'in shahid. Because for you, you are watcher and the seer of everything. So this is the attribute that's given. And Hazrat Huzur, in his Friday sermon, has also given, the example of Ar-Raqeeb when it is used for man. It's talking about two people, two beloved people, like people who love each other. In this sermon, Friday sermon of 12 October 2001, Huzur said the word Raqeeb is also used to indicate the rivalry between two men who want to marry the same woman. What happens if you want to marry a woman, then you are so, involved, and so, you are so, you diverse everything, you give out everything for that woman, you fight for that person, you are so jealous. So this is also how Allah is also very jealous when it comes to His servant, also having to turn away from Allah, going for other things. That's what the Holy Prophet ﷺ has mentioned in the hadith, that Allah is happier than that person who is in the desert. Just imagine a person in the desert having a camel and all his belongings, food and water, within, in the midst of the desert, but then lost all those things. So you see the example of that person who lost his food and sustenance. So he said, the Holy Prophet said, he said, Allah, then the person sees it back. Then Allah is happier than that very person. Because you know that obvious I'm not going to die, and I'm very happy now after having found back. So this is how Allah is Ar-Raqeeb. He's so beloved to that.
That basically means, like, when a person turns back to Allah, to seek forgiveness, and to promise to change his ways, amend, and follow the righteous course, and that is, of course, leads to God.
Exactly.
God is happier than that person who have lost everything and destined to die in a desert, and then suddenly found his camel with all the sustenance.
Exactly.
Allah is happier than
Allah
that man.
Because now the person is striving in the way of Allah. Allah is there to watch over him, to guide him through. As Allah says in the Holy Quran, لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُولُنَا وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا, those people who strive in our path to grant, to have that very way that we have created, or we have drafted. He said, لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُولَنَا. Allah will grant them the way and the pattern and the observation and guidance and everything that person needs to go through, to trek through. And this is Allah SWT being Ar-Raqeeb.
Jazakumullah, Ustaz Baba. Ustaz Ruhan, now let's see how we can benefit from this attribute of God, Ar-Raqeeb, through prayer. When we pray to God using this attribute, how should we say the prayer, or in what condition should we say the prayer?
Since we are speaking about this beautiful attribute, Ar-Raqeeb, which means the watchful. So, like, just for instance, this worldly, let's take an example, like we have children and we send them to school. And we know that since they're in the school, we are not going to see what's going on there and who's going to look after them. Although the authorities will try their level best, but no one is perfect. and we also will be aware of our limits. Like now we have left them there at the school, and there's no way we can know what's going on there. So at that point of time, we can pray to Allah the Almighty, using this attribute, seeking help concerning, for the protection of their children at school. That, oh Allah the Almighty, since my children are there, so through this beautiful attribute, just help them, just look after them and protect them from, getting harm or any kind of pain in, being at school. So then Allah the Almighty will, inshallah, will look after your children as well. So this is just an example, because we should know that the powers of Allah the Almighty are limitless. So no matter where you go, where you are, Allah the Almighty is always, looking after, is watching. So by using this attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can always, implore for help. We can seek His help. And secondly, as he made mention of this word Raqeeb, and which means like, a man or two men, having rivalry after one woman. So, similarly, when this word, this Ar-Raqeeb, is used for Allah the Almighty, that means that Allah the Almighty is also watching on to you, just to see that who do you love the most? Do you love me or you love the world? So when you will love Allah the Almighty, then He will, start bestowing His blessings upon you. So that's also another aspect of this beautiful attribute, Ar-Raqeeb, in this regard.
Yes, and Hazrat Muslim anhu, in his book Khutbati Mahmud, volume 3, page 227 to 228, he had mentioned this very thing. He said the meaning of Ar-Raqeeb is sublimed, and it refers to how that's Allah watches us to see if we are true to our love for Him. So this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very, deeply engulfed in us, to see whether we really love Him. And He provides everything, by the way. But also, if we turn away, then move towards the love of the world, whether we will also turn away from Him and move towards the love of the world. And there are other attributes that make sure that your heart is always inclined to Him. But then, if you turn away from the love of the world, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes, heartbroken, because you now have forsaken Him for another person. So this is the the hikmah that Hazrat Muslim has said in Khutbah al-Mahmud volume 3. So Allah loved us, to be frank, but then He is always there also, even though we are making mistakes, but He's there watching over us. And when we say watching over us, being there as a witness, doesn't mean He's just there like a stagnant. No. He is there to buttress this. We have to understand Allah is there to also help us, push us forward, so that we know that there is someone. That is why every time we as a man, our hearts are always, driven towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, that our hearts are always inclined to that person who does good to Him. And we know whatever we do, even if we don't do bad, sometimes we tend to remember, hey, this is not bad, because Allah has made halal and haram, so distinct that we recognize what is good and what is bad. And this is the recognition that Allah has granted us.
Jazakumullah, Ustaz Baba and Ustaz Rohan. So that basically means when we also using this attribute of God to pray, we should have it in the back of our mind that God sees everything we do. Yes. And God obviously know the intention with which we pray, and we should use this attribute to pray for protection, not for protection only from evil things, physical evil things that happen around us, for protection to guard our faith, for protection to guard us and our families from falling into things that will make them disloyal to God, because both of you have mentioned the loyalty that God requires of us, whether we would stick to Him or we will move away from Him and go for something else. And like you have mentioned, that will not be pleasing to God, because He loves us, and once a person or a being loves you, what is expected is that love should be a reciprocal love. And that is, we have to give it back. And God has given us all of it. So if we do not give it back, that is up to us to benefit from it or not to benefit from it. So Ustaz Ruhan, we have about 10 minutes to go, but let's see these other verses of the Holy Quran that are related to Ar-Raqeeb before we go into some the other attribute of God we have to talk about, that is Al-Basir.
Okay, Allah the Almighty says in the Holy Quran, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, فَخَرَجَ مِنْهَا خَائِفًا يَتَرَقَّبُ قَالَ رَبِّ نَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. That so he went forth therefrom, fearing and watchful. So the word خَائِفًا يَتَرَقَّبُ, he has been translated as fearing and watchful. He said, my Lord, deliver me from the unjust people. So we are seeking the help of Allah the Almighty. And that is what is described here. Then there's another verse. Allah the Almighty says, مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. That he utters not a word, but there is by him a guardian angel ready to record it. As earlier in the discussion, we spoke about the definition of this word, Ar-Raqeeb, and being watchful in the sense or with the aim of protecting someone, guiding someone. So here the word Raqeeb has been used as a guardian.
Ustaz, that is very important, especially the last verse you have quoted, that about uttering words, that especially in our age and time, we should be very careful of it, because we have all the means at our disposal to send it up to 100 people just by a click, 1,000, 1 million people just by a click. Just use your hand, you tap a button, and then it's open to the world. Therefore, whatever we send out there, we should check it, we should cross-check it, and if we are not sure, we should keep it to ourselves, or at least discuss it with others to have their ideas on that particular matter before we send it out. Because once the information is out there, it is difficult to retract. And therefore, if it is recorded as a bad deed for you, how many others have you infected with that bad deed? Hundreds and millions of people. And this is basically disturbing us in this age. And so that takes us to the other attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is Al-Basir. And I would want you guys just to summarize it, because we have less than 10 minutes to discuss about this attribute of God, Al-Basir. Ustaz Baba, you tell us first about the definition of Al-Basir.
Yes, I would like to read from Hazrat Muslim Anhu Ta'ala. But firstly, we have to understand Al-Basir is the person, Allah's wanted attribute, that to say the seer, the person who sees. And Hazrat Muslim alayhi salatu wasalam has also made us understand that this particular attribute, it also means the mental perception, knowledge and understanding. Al-Basir means one who sees everything hidden or apparent. That is because Allah doesn't have physical eyes. La yudrikul absar, wa huwa yudrikul absar. Innahu huwa latiful khabir. Allah's one is Latif and he is Khabir, because he has information of everything. And as a Muslim said, he said the only way we have a connection with anyone is through our hearing and seeing of them. So Allah uses this word Basir, his attribute of Basir, to link to mankind, to have this relationship with mankind. And in the Holy Quran, we have seen how Allah has made us understood this. He said, وَلَقَدْ زَرَعْنَا لِجَهَنَّمَ كَثِيرٍ مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ. We have created Jahannam, the hellfire, for lots of people amongst the jinn and men. لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ عَيُونٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ آذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْغَافِلُونَ. Because this is because of that. لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. They have hearts, but they don't understand. So the heart here is talking about that spiritual insight. Allah has granted us ways to see, because He's Al-Basir. Now He's granted us that spiritual insight for us to see through the guidance that He has gifted us with. But وَلَهُمْ عَيُونٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا. Even though they have eyes, but they cannot see, because the guidance there is not there. So we are not talking about the physical eyes here. We are talking about the spiritual eyes that Allah is granted. It is mentioned in the Holy Quran, مَنْ كَانَ فِي هَذِهِ أَعْمَى وهو في الآخرة أعمى وأضل سبيلا. Whosoever is blind in this world shall be blind in the next world. That's the Yawm al-Akhirah. It's not talking about the physical blindness. It's talking about people who are deaf and who are not seeing the guidance and the beloved, who are not seeing the spirit of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his being in this world. You cannot perceive him. You cannot phantom him thereafter if you don't phantom him in this very world.
Fail to see
Yes,
God in this
in
world.
this world.
There's no way
There's
you
no
could
way
see
to
him
see
in the
him
hereafter.
in the hereafter.
That is very important, Ustaz Baba. Ustaz Ruhan, let's see if there are other attributes of God. We have talked about one before, whether there are other attributes of God that are similar to this word, to this Al-Basir, and if there is also any difference between them.
Yeah, the attribute which is in connection with this attribute of Allah the Almighty is As-Sami, which is all hearing. Even if we look at our day-to-day life, these two attributes are very much connected to person's personality, even building up a connection or relation with each other. And in the same way, Allah the Almighty has like these two attributes are so much connected that it enables us as a guidance to develop our relation with Allah the Almighty stronger. So it also tells us that all hearing means like people have this notion now God has stopped listening. He doesn't listen, he doesn't respond, or he listens, he doesn't respond, these kind of concepts. But once the Allah the Almighty has exhibited his attribute, that is never going to end. Because if you start limiting the attribute of Allah the Almighty, then you are starting to degrade the status of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when it means that he is all hearing, so that means that you can pray to him in whatever language you speak, in whatever state you are, wherever you might be, you can reach out to him. And then coming to Al-Basir, that he is seeing what is in your heart. He is seeing your intentions, your deeds. So through that, he is able to grant his blessings upon the individuals who are seeking his help and assistance.
Well, thank you very much, Ustaz Suhan. Ustaz Bawa, we have few minutes to go, but nonetheless, we want to know how do we as a people connect with these attributes and as well as disseminate them for others to benefit from it. Because we know in the Holy Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used these attributes several times. Especially, for example, the two he was mentioning. Wherever you might see Sami, it's very likely that Basir will follow. There are other attributes like that always comes at the ends of the verse. Whenever you see this one, it's most likely the other will follow. So how can we as a people benefit from these attributes, and how can we use them as well to benefit others?
Firstly, the Holy Quran said, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Because why? The Holy Prophet exhibits all these attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said there is an excellent role model in the person of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what Allah has said in the Holy Quran. And let's see the injunctions of the Holy Quran. Allah said, فَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ إِبَادِي عَنِّي. If my servant has asked you, Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about me, فَإِنِّي قَرُوب. Let them know that I am very near. But ujibu da'wata da'i iza da'an. I answer to the supplication of that supplicant. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. Let them then hearken towards me. So this is the criteria that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has laid. That if we want to be heard, then we have to abide by the injunction. We have to listen, hearken to Allah. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. We obey Allah, we follow what He's saying. وَيُؤْمِنُوا بِهِ. Then we believe Him. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant us this. And the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam has taught his companions that if you want to earn this attribute, want to earn the blessings of this attribute, then you have to play in your istikhara by saying, Ya Khabiru, akhbirni. O you who knows everything, the person who has information of everything, the minutest information of everything. He said, grant me the knowledge of those things. He said, Ya Basiru, absirni. O he who sees everything, apparent. He said, then grant me that apparent vision also. He said, Ya Alimun, Alimni. And you who have knowledge of over everything, then also grant me the knowledge of all those things, so that I get to fathom those things. And this is mentioned in Hayat Qudsi, page 223. This was given.
Ustaz Baba, we have seen that the Prophet Musa والسلام, have used different attributes in that prayer, but they are all interlinked if you look at them. You know, Khabir, Basir, and Alim, they are all interlinked. You cannot use one, you know, and you will not see the benefits of the other. Therefore, it is important that when we are using these attributes, when we are praying, we should use these attributes of God in our prayers, because that is what they are there for. If we as the people are not benefiting from those attributes, then like you have always mentioned in our programs, we are not utilizing some of the faculties that God has endowed us with. And with time, those faculties that are not being used, they will die out and goes into extinction. And we should be very mindful of those kind of things. Jazakumullah to you, Ustaz Baba and Ustaz Rohan. This is all time allowed us. Otherwise, we would love to continue discussing on this topic. So viewers, like I said, this is all we had time for today to discuss on these two attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So from us, MTA International Gambia Studios, for now we say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
ولله الأسماء الحسنى فادعوه بها